Welcome to the show. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. Have a great show planned for you this week, a special show. We'll be talking all about the college football bowl games. This is our bowl special that we try to do every year, and because of that, I'll have a guest with me the entire show. My guest will be Scott Holt, former Ohio Valley High School football coach, most recently at Cameron High School, where he went 29-1 in his last 3 seasons, was the head coach of the OVAC All-Star game, named Valley Coach of the Year by the local newspapers, and now the Vice President of Operations at Wheelhouse Creative here in Wheeling. Scott, thanks for being here on the show.
Absolutely.
Fun always to talk football with you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Usually we do this in a little more informal setting, but today it's good to be here.
Yeah, we're going to spend this entire show talking about the bowl games, and we'll really kind of break it down into a few different segments here. We'll talk playoffs. We'll talk about the games this Saturday. A couple games in addition to the 2 playoff games. We'll talk about some of the what I call the in-between games. We give an upset special each, and then talk about the January 1 games, which is always a highlight for everybody each year.
Yeah, it's really exciting for bowl season. Have some great memories of watching bowl games. It doesn't even have to be the national championship game, but going back through the years and watching the Holiday Bowl and fun games throughout the season and seeing a lot of teams you don't get to see all the time. Now it seems like you can see a college football game team whenever you want, but some fun memories, and sure a lot of teams are going to be looking forward to making a big splash.
No doubt. Well, let's get right to it. Let's talk about the college football playoffs, which are Saturday, starting off with the 4 o'clock game. Number 1 LSU, number 4 Oklahoma. And when I think about this game, one of the first names that comes to mind for me is a name that maybe nobody, or at least your casual fans, may not have heard of, and that's Joe Brady. Joe Brady is the passing game coordinator for LSU, who I think has really made a huge impact here in his first season at LSU. He was with the Saints for a couple years as an assistant, and now comes over to LSU and really transforms that offense into something that really LSU fans and people around the country have been used to seeing from the Tigers in recent years, which is kind of an explosive offense, always a solid defense. But now Ed Orgeron brings in Joe Brady, and look at the year Joe Burrow had.
Yeah, talk about a perfect match for each other. Coach Brady and Joe Burrow certainly feeding off of each other, and just their first season together, not only at LSU but together, period. So, the Tigers, again, like you said, used to winning games in slow, kind of grinded out SEC fashion, but this year they've been able to light up the scoreboard. Certainly hard to find a weakness on that football team, other than maybe giving up a few too many points against Alabama. But LSU is playing as well as anybody in the country, obviously.
One of the interesting things about this game to me also is that LSU kind of had to. They knew they had played solid defense for a number of years, but needed to pick up the offense. On the other side of the table, Oklahoma, high-scoring team, but knew it needed to improve its defense, and it did this year during the course of the year. Had to bring in also, of course, a new quarterback, and Jalen Hurts brought him in to follow the 2 Heisman winners, and he was a Heisman finalist himself. But Lincoln Riley, calling the plays there for Oklahoma, and that's something we've seen in college football. These, young guys, maybe even in the NFL, these young guys that are kind of thought of as offensive wizards, and having a lot of success.
Yeah, and it's a very different thing to be running a program than just calling the plays. And I always enjoy watching Coach Riley coach, because his play sheet's about this big, and I always wonder how you can call an offense as powerful as Oklahoma's off of a sheet like that. But again, they have stepped up their defense. They've been knocked for that time and time again, as most Big 12 teams are. And one of the things I find interesting about this game is that LSU has prepped for Jalen Hurts many times. Maybe not at Oklahoma, but certainly makes an interesting dynamic. Jalen Hurts is very familiar with the LSU defense, and LSU defensive staff is very familiar with him.
One of the things in looking at this game, I feel like perhaps the 2 biggest playmakers on the field might be on the Oklahoma offense, and Jalen Hurts and then CeeDee Lamb at receiver, who I just love watching him play. I mean, he is just, can go up and get the ball. He's explosive after the catch, and he's just a fun player to watch. On the other side of the ball, with LSU, one big question mark is that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, their running back, is been injured and really hasn't practiced much leading up to the game. It may not be able to go a whole lot, if at all, with an injured hamstring. So, Joe Burrow is their second leading rusher. I mean, that's how much there's a drop-off after Edwards-Helaire at running back. So, that's a big question mark, I think. Oklahoma missing 2 starters on defense. Defensive end Ronnie Perkins suspended for this game. Their safety, Delarian Turner-Yell, going to miss with a broken collarbone. So some injuries, some suspensions, some guys, banged up a little bit. So, that leads to, hey, what's going to happen in this game? I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. At the end of the day, I think that LSU's played the tougher schedule in that SEC schedule that they have to manage every week. Joe Burrow's really been flawless throughout the course of the season. Really didn't have a bad game, and I think that's why he won the Heisman in runaway fashion. But I like LSU in a close one. If I was going to bet this game, I'd take Oklahoma getting the points. You're getting an awful lot of points. You're nearly 2 touchdowns. But I like LSU in a close one. This one.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think there will be a lot of points put on the scoreboard. But it's a game that the early stages of this game are going to matter. I don't think it's a game where you can get behind maybe 2 scores, either team really, and hope to score your way out of it because of how explosive the other offense is on the field. So again, if I had to make a clear-cut pick in this game, I'm going to go LSU. But I agree with you; it's going to be very close in my estimation.
Of course, that game will be at 4 o'clock on ESPN. Then the nightcap will be 8 o'clock. The other semifinal matchup, number 2 Ohio State versus number 3 Clemson. Clemson maybe a little bit of chip on its shoulder from getting that 3 spot. I mean, here they are, the defending national champions, undefeated. And hey, what more can we do? We've beaten everybody on our schedule. We won it last year. I think this game, something that not a lot of people are talking about is who's going to be able to run the football. You got J.K. Dobbins for Ohio State, Travis Etienne for Clemson. And both of those run defenses for those teams are very solid. Which one of those guys is going to be able to chew out some yards there? And I think it'll be a big factor in the game. Yeah,
and it seems like Ohio State's offensive line, in the games that I've watched, Ohio State has the best offensive line in the country that I've seen. They move well, they execute a blocking scheme extremely well. And the other thing with Ohio State is they have multiple guys that can carry the football at any given time. So it's not just the offensive line moving it, is you got to defend 2 or 3 potential ball carriers on every play.
I think the quarterback matchup in this game is interesting too. You got Trevor Lawrence, who's obviously been in big games, had to play in the playoffs last year, won a championship. And you got Justin Fields, who, you look at his stat line, 40 touchdowns to 1 interception. I mean, that's almost unheard of. 1 interception and with throwing that many touchdown passes, putting the ball up as much as he did. But maybe the experience obviously favors Lawrence a little bit. Fields maybe a little bit more mobile guy, but it's been banged up a little bit, maybe wearing a brace in this game. So that quarterback matchup could be significant as well.
Yeah, and it's not very often where you point to a quarterback as young as Trevor Lawrence and say, well, he's tested. He comes through as a freshman and wins the national championship. So you have a sophomore playing in a football game who's definitely battle tested and proved that he's won on this stage before. So what can Ohio State do to take away any advantage that he might create in the game? I'm sure they're going to be prepared.
First freshman to win a national championship since Jamel Holloway in 1985 for Oklahoma. And, Lawrence has thrown some picks this year, 8 interceptions, and people kind of got on him early saying, he's not having as good of a year. But the guy can still play football, and he's pretty good. But one of the big X factors of this game might be Chase Young, on the defensive line for Ohio State. I mean, he can be extremely disruptive. I mean, and a lot of times teams have to double team just to prevent him from being able to have that disruptive effect.
Yeah, and he's a player that you always have to account for. And people have pointed to his performance in the Michigan game and in the Big Ten championship game and said, well, that just goes to show that he's not going to get 4 or 5 sacks a game, but the resources that Michigan and Wisconsin had to devote just to blocking him, right. Will show you just the kind of dynamic player he is.
Let me ask you, as a former coach, you got Dabo Swinney on one hand for Clemson this game, then Ryan Day for Ohio State. And, Dabo Swinney's been in these playoffs. He's won championships. Ryan Day, first year as a head coach. How does that affect this big game atmosphere to have a guy who's been there before taking a program through this, and then you got Ryan Day in his first year as a head coach having to go into this playoff setting?
Well, certainly when you point to a guy like Dabo, and it's easy to say that his formula has bred success, and the things that he does to lead up to a big game are obviously working. So it's not like Ohio State doesn't have any success to rely on with that, and having Urban Meyer as your mentor certainly will prepare you to get in those big games and motivate your team for the lead up. And if you're going to make a pick solely on the coaching staff, I think you would have to take Clemson in that regard. But I'm sure Ohio State's going to be well prepared. They seem to be loose coming into this game. Seeing a lot of social media video where the team's been having a good time and in the right way on the field, and the coaches are always around and with those kids. So it seems to be a very loose group for Ohio State.
You mentioned the staff. A lot of people think Clemson defensive coordinator Brent Venables is the best coordinator in the country, and that'll certainly be a factor as well. But overall, I think Clemson just has too much experience. I mean, I look at that. You get Dabo Swinney, Brent Venables, as I was just mentioning, Trevor Lawrence, who's been in this game before. Etienne at running back, T. Higgins, who we haven't mentioned yet, a huge playmaker at receiver, and they just have a system in place now where it seems like they're there every year, kind of like Alabama's been. And I just think it's too much. I think that Clemson wins this game, and I don't think it's as close as people think it's going to be. I think Clemson wins this one without a lot of difficulty.
This is a really difficult game to predict just because of the ACC being a little bit down as a conference this year. Well, some would say more than a little bit. You know, when you grade out schedules, Clemson seems to rank in the 50s, so it's how much do you believe in and what Clemson has on paper. I'm actually going to lean slightly toward Ohio State in this game. I think that they're just a little bit more balanced of a team and can hurt you in multiple ways. So I'm going to go with the Buckeyes. Close Buckeye
Our first
win.
disagreement of the day. There we go. We need to take a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about the other games that will be played this Saturday. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration.
I'll tell you, I was getting ready to shave, and then the Mountaineer highlights came on, and I forgot all about the water. And then, boom, there's water coming through the ceiling. And I tell you what, I was going to shave, but now I'm swimming. Please, Glenn, please, can you help me?
We'll send a crew immediately.
When disaster strikes the Wolfman, I call the restoration company that the Mountaineers call, Panhandle Cleaning and Restoration, and you should too. Boom!
Sunset Motors continues to be the 2019 Ohio Valley leader in Jeep, Ram, Chrysler, and Dodge sales. Now get employee pricing plus on 2020 models at the Big Finish event. Get a Ram 4x4 for just $28,791, or lease a Bighorn for just $299 per month. Lease a new Compass Latitude for $279 per month, or a Cherokee Latitude Plus for just $289 per month, or an all-new Gladiator Sport.
You can love where you drive at Sunset.
Welcome back to the show. This is our college football bowl preview, and we've got with me Scott Holt here. We've been talking about the Saturday games. We talked about the playoffs, but a couple other games worth watching on Saturday as well at noon. And the first one is the Cotton Bowl, which is always a fun game to watch. I think taking me back to my days when I was a kid, this will be at noon on ESPN. You got number 17 Memphis versus one of the traditional blue bloods of college football, Penn State, who's ranked number 10 right now. And, you know, kind of interesting to see like I said, blue blood versus the kind of up and comer maybe.
Yeah, it's a fun game whenever you see that group of 5 team come in. You know, from Conference USA, Memphis Tigers. So Memphis is supposed to have one of the best offenses in the country. We're going to find out because they play a very good Penn State defense.
Well, you know, that's something that people don't realize about Penn State. I mean, giving up 97 yards a game rushing defense, allowing 14 points per game, and you know, 8 of its 12 opponents scored less than 2 touchdowns. So, you know, Memphis, of course, wants to prove itself, and that's a big deal. But Mike Norvell not there to coach. Their head coach, you know, has departed for Florida State. He won't coach in this game. And I think that's a big deal. And unfortunately, you see that so much with these group of 5 schools. The ones that have the undefeated season or the one-loss season and getting in one of these big bowl games, then the coach is gone because they're just a natural pick for one of the openings for the big Power 5 jobs.
Right, very difficult. Seems to happen, like you said, year after year. I'm sure plans in place for Memphis. You know, it's not like any of the players went anywhere, so they still have an excellent offense there. And, you know, I think Penn State's going to have to win this game ugly. The odds makers think there's going to be around 60 points scored in this game. I think it's going to be way less than that. I think Penn State's defense is too good.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be that many points either, but I do think Penn State gets the win over Memphis in this one.
Yeah, the uglier this game, the better chance there is that Penn State wins this.
Yeah. The Camping World Bowl also at noon on ABC right here on WTRF. And this game, interesting, another kind of one of the big names of college football versus somebody trying to make a name for itself. That's number 15 Notre Dame against Iowa State, you know, a program that really has never had a whole lot of success. Interestingly, Notre Dame had the highest scoring offense that it's had in the Brian Kelly era this year, and then immediately let go its offensive coordinator, Chip Long. And, you know, Brian Kelly's hasn't gotten completely into the details of that, but you read between the lines, he basically said it wasn't the production of the offense. And the word is Chip Long couldn't get along with the rest of the staff, couldn't get along with the players, and it was just a really bad dynamic. So Brian Kelly hasn't said who will call the plays in this game. He said it won't be him. He knows that for sure. Probably going to be Tommy Rees, the former Notre Dame quarterback, who's now on staff and is coaching the quarterbacks. Probably going to call it. So it could you know, be interesting in that regard. You have a first-time play caller in the game.
Yeah, and this brings up one of those age-old bowl questions: is how much does the team want to be there? We know Iowa State wants to be there because anybody that's playing Notre Dame in a bowl game wants to be there, wants to win. I think Notre Dame's clearly the better team. but how much does Notre Dame want to play a noon kickoff against Iowa State? How motivated are you? That's the question for Notre Dame. If they can go in there, take care of business. Iowa State's a very good team. I don't think, you and I saw them in person. I don't think they're going to do anything to get themselves beat. I just think Notre Dame is a better overall team.
Their quarterbacks really impressed me. Brock Purdy, thrown for getting close to 4,000 yards on the season. He and Ian Book, Notre Dame's quarterback, can both move around, make plays with their feet and with their arm. Book only 6 interceptions on the season, sometimes too safe, not willing to take any chances to get the ball downfield. But I agree with you. Iowa State's going to prove that it can play with the big names of college football. But I just think the experience of Notre Dame being in these big games and the firepower and the strength that Notre Dame has is to be too much. Notre Dame's played 5 teams that are currently ranked in the top 25, more than any other team that's ranked this season. So I think Notre Dame, and I think will be by more than a touchdown.
I would agree. And again, Notre Dame's losses are extremely forgivable. You have a tough night against Michigan where it just seemed like nothing would go right, and at Georgia. So not a blemish on Notre Dame's record, really. Where Iowa State's coming into this game, I think 7-5. So, again, I think Notre Dame's the better team. I think they'll play like the better team, and I would tend to agree they'll win this game by double digits.
Let's turn to the Orange Bowl. That game will be Monday at 8 o'clock on ESPN. You got number 9 Florida versus number 24 Virginia. And this game kind of bothers me. It's part of what I don't like about the bowl selection process. You got Virginia sitting there, just got blown out by Clemson by 40-some points. They got 4 losses. We're just talking about Notre Dame, who's ranked number 15 and actually beat Virginia by 15 points. And you got Alabama sitting there, Auburn sitting there, and here you got Virginia in the Orange Bowl because the ACC gets a bid and Clemson is in the playoffs. So, I just don't think it's a good matchup. Kyle Trask has had a really good year at quarterback for Florida. Bryce Perkins, a lot of fun to watch for Virginia. He's their leading passer and rusher, but I think Florida wins this one big.
Yeah, Florida should cruise, again, number 9 in the country, and I don't feel like I've watched enough Florida football. It used to seem like Florida was on every week and had marquee matchups. It seems like Florida's kind of under the radar. They've done what they've supposed to do, but haven't exceeded any expectations. But again, I think Florida pretty easily. Virginia's offense has been bad, so Florida win wouldn't be out of the question.
We need to take a break, but when we come back, we'll give you a couple of upset picks for the in-between games, and later on we'll get to the New Year's Day Bowl. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
Tractor trailers are some of the most dangerous vehicles on the road. There are federal rules for load sizes, driver's hours, and maintenance for a reason. When big rigs don't follow these rules, entire families can be torn apart. We have the talent and the resources to take on these large companies. Hopefully, through our work, families are being helped and trucking companies are getting the message about safety. Bordas and Bordas, fighting for justice.
Hi, Banks did great today. He looks great after his spa day.
For being such a good boy, we'll take these 2.
Great.
Thanks to my free Casasa cashback checking account from Belmont Savings Bank, my Casasa cash is paying for my dog's treats.
Casasa pays you cash back on everyday debit card purchases, plus refunds on ATM withdrawal fees nationwide. Open your account today at Belmont Savings Bank to take back banking and enjoy monthly cash rewards with Casasa.
Welcome back to the show. This is our college football bowl special, and I have with me Scott Holt, former high school coach here in the Valley. We've been talking about these games, Scott, but let's give a couple of upset picks for New Year's Eve. Always fun to watch some football if you're not out doing other things. And I'm going to give mine first. I like Kansas State over Navy. Navy's a 3-point favorite in this game, ranked number 23 in the country. This is the Liberty Bowl, by the way, 3:45 on ESPN. And Kansas State beat Oklahoma. They beat Iowa State. Oklahoma's only loss, of course, and they're in the playoffs. And I just think navigating the Big 12. What would Navy's record be if they were in the Big 12? It wouldn't be 10-2 or whatever it is.
Not.
So I like Kansas State and the upset in that one.
Yeah, not a bad pick. And Navy is not a fresh team. They've just played their huge rival Army. They get the win there, and so you talk about teams being fresh during bowl season. Navy is coming off a game 2 weeks ago.
How about you? What about your upset pick?
My upset pick is Texas over Utah. The game's being played in San Antonio in the Alamo Bowl, New Year's Eve in a night game. Texas traded punches with LSU early in the season. Again, they were fresh during that game. They should be fresh for this one. And Oklahoma comes into the playoffs at 12-1. That loss is to Texas. So, I always say if you're going to bet on a horse, you don't want, if it's going to be a long shot, you don't want the one that always finishes second. Texas could come in and lose this game by 30 points. But if you're going to take a team, I want the team the quality of Texas.
I picked Texas to make the playoffs this year before the season started, and a really disappointing year for them. But I think also they could pull the upset. But listen, Kyle Whittingham at Utah, the head coach, 11-2 in bowl games at Utah. I mean, really always been impressive in the bowls. So that should be a fun game to watch.
Yeah, and Utah certainly coming in with a lot to prove. Lackluster effort against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game. They got a lot to prove. But I'm going to go with Texas.
Let's turn to New Year's Day. All right, always a lot of fun. After being out or doing whatever New Year's Eve, and then to sit and watch football all day. I always enjoy doing that. And, 1 o'clock, the Outback Bowl's on ESPN. That's got number 18 Minnesota versus number 12 Auburn. Gus Malzahn seems like constantly coaching for his job. It seems like every time. But last time out, he saved it. He beat Alabama. But look, they lost to Florida, LSU, Georgia. They beat Oregon and Alabama. I mean, they've played some quality teams. They lost a few. They've won a couple big ones. And you look at Minnesota's Big Ten record. They didn't have to play Ohio State. They didn't play Michigan. They lost 2 of their 3 biggest games. Really, they lost to Iowa. They lost to Wisconsin. They did get that big win over Penn State. But, I really think this game's a mismatch, Scotty. I mean, I think that Auburn wins this one, and I really don't think it's competitive.
Yeah, and people put a lot of stock into Minnesota, but they got a flashy head coach, and, they're new on the scene. They're a trendy team to like. But, again, Auburn is a blue blood of this sport. Gus Malzahn just keeps winning 10, 11, 12 games. He's got national championships. I really think Auburn dominates this game. Minnesota, certainly the motivated team. But Auburn's just way too good.
Gus Malzahn with the misfortune of coaching in the same state as the Alabama in the Nick Saban era, or who knows what they may have done. It's always interesting to watch programs like that kind of get stuck in an era where it's like teams in the NFL. If you're in the AFC during the Bill Belichick, Tom Brady era, what would you have done otherwise? Perhaps a team like the Steelers. So I think Malzahn kind of fits into that category, and perhaps if he can hang on long enough to see Nick Saban retire, then what's he able to do there? So.
Yeah, if he can stay, right? Like you were saying.
Got to hang on to that job, because every week it's like, who knows what that fan base thinks. We're going to take a break. When we come back we'll come back with our final segment. We'll talk about the remainder of the New Year's Day game. Stay with us here on the Jamie Bordas Show.
A world of Christmas wonder awaits at Ogilvy in Wheeling, West Virginia. Experience the magic of the season.
When reviewing your oil and gas offers or royalty check statements, do you wonder, am I being offered a fair amount? Do I feel comfortable reading the statement? Do I have peace of mind? If you answered no to these questions, you need Bordas Mineral Management. Our passion is helping mineral owners protect and expand their mineral wealth. Our examiners tell you whether you're being treated fairly and getting paid what is rightfully yours. Bordas Mineral Management. Be protected. Have peace of mind.
Welcome back to the show. This is our College Football Bowl special, and I have with me Scott Holt, former high school coach here in the Valley. And we've been talking about the New Year's Day games, and let's move on to another one, which is the Citrus Bowl. Will be 1 o'clock New Year's Day right here on WTRF on ABC, and it's got number 14 Michigan against number 13 Alabama, and kind of surprising Alabama dropped all the way to 13 after that loss to Auburn. But Michigan has struggled to win big games under Jim Harbaugh. I mean, I think when you look at it, when he was out at Stanford, his style of offense was really something different than what those Pac-12 teams were used to seeing every week. The 2 tight end sets, 3 tight end sets pounded at you. But that's not at all different than what the Big Ten's used to seeing. And with the SEC now, he's playing Alabama. They're definitely suited to stop the run if they need to. Alabama, no Tua, 2 defensive players sitting out because they want to get ready for the draft. But Nick Saban seems to always have his team ready, and I think he probably recognizes the importance of this game in terms of the program, not letting it slide further down in the rankings, that type of thing. So how's this one shake out?
Sure, huge game for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, but as you said, he doesn't seem to have the track record to win these types of games. The last time Alabama was not in one of the New Year's Six, one of the big bowl games, was I think 2011, when they beat Michigan State by 42 points. So if you're questioning Nick Saban's ability to get a team ready to play in a game like this, I think this is it. I think this game gets a big audience because so many people want to see either one of these teams lose a game. That I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this game no matter who wins it. But I think Alabama goes in and makes a real mess of the Michigan offense.
Yeah, too much firepower. Now Mac Jones has had a few weeks here to get ready for this game at quarterback. So I just think it's too much there and too much talent in Alabama. One of my favorite games every year, the granddaddy of them all, they call it, the Rose Bowl, 5 o'clock on ESPN. Number 6 Oregon versus number 8 Wisconsin. Really a contrast of styles here in different parts of the country. Oregon, had kind of 2 slip-ups. They were up on Auburn a bunch and then let Auburn come back late in the game. Lost to Arizona by a field goal. Wisconsin had 2 losses to Ohio State. Nothing you could be ashamed of. And then the 1-point loss to Illinois in the last-second field goal. But 2 very solid football teams, evenly matched. But again, contrast of styles. Jonathan Taylor behind that big Wisconsin offensive line, running the football, one of the best backs in the country. Then Justin Herbert wants to throw it all over the place out there at Oregon, and people talking about him maybe being the top draft pick in the NFL draft. So what happens in this one? I'm
looking forward to this game as much as anyone. I think if you ask the average person on the street who's in the Rose Bowl this year, I don't think 9 out of 10 people would know it, and it's a fantastic game. Oregon, their offense is chugging right along. They run the ball a lot more than they ever used to. I think Oregon wins this game. Again, Wisconsin, a very quality team, but I think, if you expanded this playoff to 8 teams, I think a lot of people would be talking about Oregon having a legitimate chance to win the national championship.
Yeah, the thing I look at is that oftentimes in bowl games, it seems these top runners get shut down. It's easier to game plan for the running game and to shut down a good back. And I'm just not sure Jack Cohn, a quarterback for Wisconsin, can make enough plays. So I think Oregon wins this game, but I do think it'll be an entertaining game. And then you turn into the nightcap in the Sugar Bowl, 8:45 on ESPN. You got number 5 Georgia against number 7 Baylor, and of course, Baylor's only 2 losses coming to Oklahoma, who's in the playoff. But Georgia, one of the best run defenses in the country, only giving up 72 yards a game on the ground. That puts a lot of pressure on Charlie Brewer at quarterback for Baylor. Georgia lost to LSU. They had that loss to South Carolina in double overtime where their kicking game just disappeared all of a sudden. And Georgia's built like one of the best teams in college football. I mean, they're built like those teams are, like the LSU's, Alabama's, Clemson's. I think Baylor, a great year for them, but I just don't think they're in the same class.
If it shows anything, Georgia's thinking national championship this year, and now they're in the Sugar Bowl, which a lot of teams would love to be in, including Baylor. Tickets are going for $6 online for this game, so that shows you that the Georgia fan base might not be totally behind.
And they normally travel well.
They do, and so just that right there might show you that everyone in the state of Georgia is down on this team a little bit. Again, they're very good. Baylor and Matt Rule just seem to be playing at a high level right now. Georgia's going to have to get a lead in this game and really physically punish Baylor, or else I really think Baylor could hang into this game. Baylor's down 2 touchdowns late. It's not over. You saw they almost upset Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship game. I like Baylor to really stay close in this game, maybe even win it.
Well, do they win it? I'm going to put you to the fire.
I'll take Baylor.
All right, I'm going to go with Georgia. Hey, I really appreciate being here.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for
appreciate
doing this.
it.
Hope you and your
Happy
family
New
have a
Year
great
to
New
you.
Year.
Thank you.
I appreciate you being here on the show. Well, I want to wish all of you a very happy New Year as well. Stay safe. The Steelers need to win and the Titans to lose. We'll talk about that next week. But wishing you all a very, very happy New Year. Thanks for joining on the show. We'll see you next time on the Jamie Bordas Show.